the spark that lit the fuse. The outpost was quiet, but not peaceful. The air was heavy with tension. Humans and aliens worked side by side, but no one really trusted each other. The alliance was new. Too new. Tyra stood near the main gate, arms crossed, her sharp eyes watching a group of human engineers repair a broken drone. She clicked her tongue in disgust. Slow, clumsy, she muttered. Why does the council think they're worth anything? A human soldier nearby heard her. He looked up, ready to speak, but quickly turned away. Tyra was Zeveron royalty. Noble, blood, warrior caste known for power and pride. No one wanted to risk an argument with her, not again. But Commander Rourke was not like the others. He walked up the path slowly, his boots crunching against the gravel. His posture was calm. His uniform was dusty, worn. A scar ran down his cheek. He had seen war, real war. He had nothing to prove. Tyra spotted him and smirked. Come to watch your workers fumble around again, Commander? Rourke didn't smile. I came to talk, he said simply. Tyra tilted her head, amused. Is this about the transport shuttle? Yes, he replied. You disabled it again. I was testing their reaction time, she said, brushing a silver braid over her shoulder. They failed. You nearly got 2 people killed. Tyra shrugged. They should be faster. Rourke didn't raise his voice. He didn't step closer. But there was something in his eyes. Steady, cold, unshaken. It was the kind of look that made warriors pause. This is your final warning, Tyra, he said. I've let your games slide. The name-calling, the threats, even the sabotage. But this ends now. A small crowd had gathered. Humans stopped their work. Even the Zeveron guards turned their heads. Everyone could feel it. Something important was happening. Tyra's smirk faded. You dare threaten me? I'm not threatening you, Rourke said. I'm telling you what comes next. Tyra stepped forward. Her voice dropped to a hiss. I'm Zeveron nobility. You don't give me warnings. I give them. Not here, Rourke said. Here. Your rank means nothing if it endangers lives. The next time you pull something like this, you won't be dealing with me. You'll be answering to the Alliance Tribunal. That word, tribunal, made Tyra blink. Even she knew that was serious. That meant exile. Or worse. But instead of showing fear, she laughed. You think you scare me, human? You think you can control me with rules and threats? She said, stepping back. I am not your soldier. I do what I please. She turned, cape swirling, and stormed off. The crowd broke apart slowly. No one said a word. Rourke didn't move for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, heading back toward the command center. Later that night, the sky above the outpost turned orange. A supply ship exploded in orbit. Wreckage fell like shooting stars raining down across the mountains. The alarm blared. Sirens echoed through the base. Humans and aliens rushed to safety. Tyra stood on the observation deck watching the fire. In the sky, her face was still. Her arms were folded tightly. No one could read her expression. Behind her, a small figure stepped out from the shadows. It was her brother Valen. Older, thinner, but sharper in voice. You've pushed him far enough, he said. Tyra didn't turn. He gave me a warning. Valen nodded, and he meant it. There was silence between them. The sky burned. Above. We can use this, Valen continued. We've already stolen what we need. The weapon is hidden. Tyra finally turned, eyes narrowed. You stole it? He smiled faintly. I knew you would distract them, and now we're ready. One strike, and they'll be forced to leave this planet. That wasn't the plan, she said. We were going to push them back, not start a war. This isn't a war, he replied. It's a correction. The humans don't belong here, they never did. Tyra looked out at the horizon. Below she could see humans gathering pieces of the destroyed shuttle. Some were helping the wounded. Others were just staring at the sky. trying to understand what had happened. "I don't like him," she said softly. "But he didn't deserve that." Valen stepped closer. "Don't tell me you care." Tyra's jaw clenched. "No, I don't." But her hand trembled. Shadows behind the throne. The night after the explosion, the outpost barely slept. The humans were still digging out burnt equipment from the mountainside, their floodlights cutting through the smoke like ghostly fingers. Alien workers moved silently alongside them, but there was no conversation between the species. Only tired eyes, metal parts, and fear. Inside the command center, screens blinked with error messages and incoming reports. One camera feed flickered and distorted before clearing up again. Commander Rourke leaned forward, eyes narrowing as he watched the same frame on repeat. A cloaked figure walking past the perimeter gate, carrying a case. It glowed faintly, red like a slow-burning ember. He pressed pause, enhanced the image. No face, no clear features. But the figure's stride was confident, practiced. Someone who knew the layout of the base, someone who didn't need directions or help. He called for a full sweep. The human engineers would scan for signatures. The Zeveran guards would be questioned. And if no one stepped forward, they'd start checking access logs one by one. Whoever had taken that weapon wasn't just trying to hurt the humans. They were trying to start something far bigger. While Rourke reviewed footage, Tyra sat alone in her private quarters, staring at the wall. She hadn't spoken to anyone since the warning. She hadn't even contacted her brother again. Her thoughts, twisted and circled like a trapped bird. She hated Rourke's voice echoing in her head. "Final warning, Tyra." She didn't fear him. She couldn't. That would make her weak. She was Zeveran. Raised on cold marble floors, trained by blades, told since childhood that she would command armies, not answer to humans. But the problem was, he never shouted at her, never hit back, never played her game. And that made him harder to ignore. Every time she struck out with words or actions, he only looked at her with those same quiet eyes. Not soft, but solid. Unshakable. Her comlink buzzed. She opened the message. No name, just coordinates. The same ones her brother used when they met in secret. She left at once, slipping through the outpost like a shadow. No one stopped her. She was still royalty after all. Untouchable. For now. Deep in the forest, far from the human scanners, Tyra found her brother again. Valen stood by a fallen tree, a thin data pad in his hand. Behind him, two rebels adjusted equipment beneath camo netting. The stolen weapon sat on the ground, pulsing with red light. It was more dangerous than she thought. Unstable, humming like it was alive. Valen didn't greet her. He simply said, "They're blaming a Zeveran for the theft, and soon they'll blame you." Tyra raised an eyebrow. "I didn't steal anything." "You didn't need to," Valen replied. "Your face is enough. Your name. Your past. That's all they'll use." She stepped closer to the weapon. "What is this, Valen? This isn't what we talked about." He looked at her, calm and cold. "It's what must be done." "No. This is madness," she said, suddenly feeling heat rise in her chest. "You're not striking fear. You're declaring war." Valen's expression didn't change. "You're too close to them. I warned you not to get involved. That human, Rourke, he's gotten under your skin." Tyra stared at him. "He gave me a warning. He didn't even touch me." "And that makes him dangerous," Valen said. "He's smarter than the rest. The ones who yell are easy to crush, but the ones who wait, they're the ones who break empires." She didn't respond. The words sat heavy in her throat. She looked again at the weapon. It was real, activated, ready to be delivered into orbit. Once launched, it would lock onto human ships and tear them apart molecule by molecule. No chance of escape. No chance for mercy. Valen took a step forward. "You still have a role to play. But you must choose now, sister. Either help me frame Rourke completely, or disappear." "Frame him," she whispered. "I have the evidence. I planted false comms in his quarters. I forged a path showing him meeting with rebel agents. Soon, even his own people will doubt him. Tyra's fists clenched. You never told me you'd go this far. Valen leaned in. They will never see you as one of them. Remember that. He left her there in the dark. The rebels followed, vanishing into the trees. Tyra didn't return to the outpost right away. She stayed there for hours, watching the red light on the weapon throb like a heart. By the time she returned to her room, human guards were already posted near her hallway. They didn't look at her. They didn't speak. But when she passed one of the control rooms, she caught sight of Rourke through the glass. He was watching the same footage again and again, someone slipping out with the weapon. The figure wore a cloak, but something about the way it moved. Tyra knew it wasn't Rourke, and yet if no one stopped her brother's lie, everyone else might believe it was. In that moment, she saw two futures in her mind. In one, Rourke was executed. The humans pulled out. War returned. Fire across the stars. In the other, she told the truth, and for the first time in her life, Tyra didn't know which side she was on. The frame-up it started with a whisper, one short message broadcast across the Zeveron internet, picked up by loyalists and council members alike. Evidence secured. Human commander involved in sabotage. Prepare for tribunal. Tyra stood, frozen in her chamber as the words echoed through the airwaves. The message was short, but the meaning behind it was explosive. Her brother had done it. He had sent the forged proof. A trail of manipulated data, hacked logs, and carefully edited images now pointed straight at Commander Rourke. And it was working. The Zeveron High Council, already tired of what they saw as human arrogance, called for immediate action. Their orders were swift and cold. Rourke was to be detained and tried for espionage. Tyra didn't even have time to think before it happened. She was standing in the garden quadrant, pacing, trying to decide what to do, when the alarms began. A high metallic wail cut through the base. Guards rushed toward the center tower. Tyra followed, her stomach twisting. By the time she reached the command floor, it was over. Rourke stood surrounded by 4 Zeveran guards, their spears drawn, and glowing with charged energy. He didn't resist, he didn't even speak. He just stood tall, arms behind his back, his eyes locked with hers through the crowd. And something in that silence shattered Tyra's chest. He knew. He knew she had helped make this happen. Maybe not directly. Maybe not on purpose. But she had opened the door, mocked him, pushed him, distracted the others while the real plan moved forward. She had set the pieces on the board, and now he was the one falling. As the guards led him away, Tyra didn't move. She just stood there, feeling as if her boots had melted into the ground. The humans looked lost, confused, some of them angry. A few even shouted, demanding an explanation, but no one could stop the council's order. Not on Zeveran soil. Later, that night, Tyra sat in the empty training hall, a place where she once practiced battle forms with her instructors. The room was cold. She didn't light the torches. She didn't need the fire. Her thoughts were burning enough. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Not her brother this time. It was the human medic. A woman named Collins. I thought I'd find you here, Collins said, voice quiet but firm. You always come here when you're hiding. Tyra didn't look up. I'm not hiding. No? Then what do you call this? Collins asked, walking closer. You know what they're doing to Rourke, don't you? Tyra said nothing. Collins sighed and sat down on the bench beside her. He protected you. Every time someone brought up your sabotage, he covered for you. He said you were adjusting, that you needed time. I didn't ask him to protect me, Tyra snapped. No, Collins replied, eyes sharp. But he did anyway, because he believed you were better than your behavior. Tyra felt the heat rise behind her eyes. She blinked fast, angry at herself. She had never cried, not even as a child, not during training, not when her father died. But something about this felt different, like the foundation of her pride had cracked. Collins stood and walked toward the door. If you really want to stay silent, fine. But just know, silence is also a choice, and this one, it'll cost lives. When the door closed behind the medic, Tyra was already moving. She didn't go to her brother. Not yet. She needed answers, real ones. She needed to know what he had truly done, and what evidence he had created. She slipped into the data center, avoiding the patrols, bypassing locks she had memorized long ago. Inside, the main console blinked quietly. She used her clearance code to open the secure files. The screen lit up. Folders named Op Smokevale, Human Disgrace, Tribunal Proof. She clicked and froze. There on the screen was footage of Rourke speaking to a cloaked figure. It looked like a secret meeting, but Tyra recognized the location. It was outside the outpost, near the old comm tower. She remembered that day. She had been there too, just out of frame. Except this footage had been altered. Rourke's voice had been twisted, spliced to say things he never said. The other figure's face had been wiped clean, but there was a brief flicker, one glitch, and for half a second she saw it. Velan, her brother, had edited himself out and replaced the context completely. The deception was deep, elegant, and perfectly timed, and she had helped make it real. She sank into the chair, eyes wide, heart pounding. This wasn't about pride anymore. This wasn't about rebellion or proving herself stronger than the humans. This was about truth. She had one chance to stop this before it spiraled further. But if she exposed the lie, if she turned on her brother, then the Zeveran Council would turn on her too. She would lose her title, her future, maybe even her life. The door opened suddenly. Tyra spun, hand on her belt, but it was Rourke. He stood in the doorway, one eye bruised, clothes dirty but intact. How are you free?" she asked. He walked forward slowly. "There's something you need to understand, Tyra." She stared at him, breath caught in her chest, and then he said it. "I knew you'd come here. Now tell me the truth. How deep does this go?" Traitor. Blood. The word traitor echoed like a hammer strike in her mind. Tyra sat motionless in the interrogation room, her hands folded neatly on the steel table. She wasn't bound, yet. But the walls around her no longer felt like parts of a home or base. They felt like they were slowly folding inward, like the outpost was turning into a mouth preparing to swallow her whole. Across from her sat Commander Rourke. His face was hard to read. Calm, yes, focused. But behind his eyes was something sharper than anger. It was purpose. Quiet, deliberate purpose. The kind that didn't need to shout. It simply moved forward like a slow avalanche. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. She didn't answer. "I saw the footage," he continued. "The original files, before they were scrubbed. I know your brother forged it. I know you didn't report it. What I don't know is why." Tyra's fingers twitched slightly. She wanted to tell him she didn't know either. That everything had spiraled too fast. That her brother's plan had twisted into something darker than she had expected. But excuses felt like ash in her mouth. The truth was uglier. She had been silent because deep down, part of her wanted to see what would happen. To see if humans would break, but they didn't. He didn't, and that made her feel smaller than she had ever felt in her life. Outside, footsteps approached, sharp, marching, Zeveran guards. The door opened. A messenger stepped in, young, pale, shaking slightly. He handed a crystal data drive to Rourke and whispered something into his ear. Tyra couldn't hear the words, but she saw the moment his shoulders stiffened. Saw the moment his mouth turned into a thin, angry line. Rourke stood. "Up, she signed it," he said quietly. Tyra blinked. "Who?" He dropped the data crystal on the table. "Your mother." She stared at it. The execution list was just released. Rourke continued. "Your name is on it. So is mine." She's calling it a purification of Zeveron bloodlines. Anyone who collaborates with humans will be wiped out. Tyra's vision blurred for a moment, not from tears but from disbelief. Her mother, High Matron Lyrex, had always been distant but never cruel. Cold, yes. Obsessed with tradition, yes. But this? Ordering her own daughter's death? Rourke leaned on the table, voice low. They're planning something bigger than we thought. The weapon's no longer missing. It's being prepped on the flagship Vox Eternum. It will strike the human colony of Marith within 24 hours. You can't stop it, Tyra said automatically. The flagship is guarded by a full squadron. I'm not asking for permission, Rourke replied. I'm going with or without you. That made her lift her eyes. Why would you still trust me? She asked. Rourke gave a sad, tired smile. Because I saw what you did. Tyra frowned. You could have let your brother destroy me, but instead you pulled the truth. You came. To the data core, you stood at the line. That means something, maybe not to your people, but it does to mine. He started toward the door. Tyra stood slowly. If I help you, I can't go back. I know. And if we fail, you die, he said simply. We both do. The words fell like stone. But for once they didn't feel like a threat. They felt like a choice. She followed him out of the room. They took a covert route through the service tunnels beneath the base, past power cores and oxygen ducts, through areas where the walls were still blackened from old war damage. Tyra walked, in silence, her fingers brushing along the scorch marks, remembering stories her father once told her, how her people believed humans were short-lived, emotional creatures, easy to manipulate. And yet here she was, running beside one, trusting one, fighting for his world. When they emerged from the tunnels, they headed straight for the hidden shuttle bay. Only a few ships were docked, and even fewer pilots still loyal to peace. But they found one. Lieutenant Aaron, a human pilot with cybernetic eyes and scars that reached the back of his neck. You're both crazy, Aaron said as he adjusted the coordinates for stealth flight. The Vox Eternum is suicide. Tyra stepped into the cockpit, voice steady. We're not here to survive. We're here to stop the end. That made Aaron raise an eyebrow, but he nodded. As the shuttle lifted into the night sky, Tyra looked down at the outpost for what might be the last time. The lights were dim, most of the base asleep, unaware of the storm gathering above their heads. Rourke sat across from her, checking his weapons, his mind already locked into the mission. She broke the silence one last time. My name, it's not going to mean anything after this. Rourke looked up. Then make it mean something now. The stars wrapped around them as they flew toward the flagship, and Tyra realized something she never had before. Not during training, not during war, not even when she wore her family crest like a crown. She didn't want to be a symbol anymore. She just wanted to be someone who did the right thing, even if it killed her. Countdown to extinction. The stars no longer twinkled. They pulsed, slow and red, as if bleeding across the void. From the cockpit window, Tyra stared at the massive structure, drifting in high orbit. The Vox Eternum didn't look like a warship at first glance. It looked like a floating temple. Smooth, dark silver hulls curved in spirals around a glowing center. The Zeveron flagship had been designed not just for battle, but for pride. Its surface bore ancient markings of their oldest victories. Its towers reached like fingers toward the black sky, silently daring the universe to challenge their place among the stars. And deep in its heart, the stolen weapon now hummed to life. Inside, the small stolen shuttle, no one spoke for a while. The cockpit was lit by soft blue panels, and the only sound was the low thrum of stealth engines. Tyra sat strapped beside Rourke, her fingers curled tightly around the arms of her seat. She wasn't afraid of dying, not exactly. It was the failure that haunted her, the idea of arriving too late, of watching everything burn because she waited too long to act. She turned to Rourke. If this fails, there will be no hiding. The humans will pull out of every agreement. The council will say it proves we can't be trusted. I know, he replied. And if we succeed? She asked, a bitter twist in her voice. You think they'll suddenly see us as equals? Rourke glanced at her, his voice quiet. If we succeed, we buy the chance to try. Tyra didn't answer, because chance was the one word her people had never respected. Zeverons believed in order, structure, lineage, not chance, not hope. But that was what the humans kept betting on over and over again, and somehow they kept surviving. The shuttle neared the flagship's docking ring. Tyra keyed in the access codes, her last gift from her royal status, and the outer bay door slid open with a low hiss. No alarms yet. That gave them 5 minutes, maybe less. As they stepped inside, the air was colder, thinner, designed for Zeveron lungs. Rourke exhaled slowly through his rebreather while adjusting the rifle on his back. They moved quickly through the lower decks, staying to the shadows. Tyra remembered these halls well. She had walked them in ceremony as a child, visiting with her mother for military parades. Now she crept past those same banners, only this time as a traitor. The first guards they encountered didn't see it coming. Tyra moved like wind, her twin blades silent and sure. Rourke stayed behind her, covering the angles. One guard reached for an alarm. Rourke shot him through the arm, disabling him. No one was killed, not yet. Tyra insisted. No corpses, she had told him on the way. The fewer martyrs, the less war afterward. They reached the inner chamber just as the countdown began. A low mechanical voice echoed from the walls. Final targeting sequence, initiated, human colony, Marith, estimated impact in 2,200 seconds. Tyra stared at the weapon. It was worse than she remembered. The heart of the machine spun with alien energy, drawing in power from the ship's core. It wasn't just Zeveran tech. It had been enhanced with something else, something stolen, experimental, likely scavenged from forgotten war relics. And once it was fired, it wouldn't just destroy the colony. It would rewrite the air, the soil, even the structure of the planet's crust. It would leave a graveyard. No more talking, Rourke said, placing a charge near the conduit. But before they could finish, a voice thundered from behind them. Step away from it, now. Tyra froze. She didn't have to turn to recognize the voice. Her brother's tone carried the weight of her childhood, her training, every lesson whispered into her ears during sleepless nights. Valen. He stepped out of the shadows, flanked by elite Zeveran warriors, armor marked with blood-red crests. Knew you would come, Valen said softly, almost fondly. But I didn't think you would bring him. Rourke raised his weapon slightly, not firing. You planned all this, Tyra said, turning. Her voice was low. You knew they'd blame him. You wanted the humans to strike back. Phelan's expression was calm, almost sorrowful. We needed a villain to rally the cast. Rourke served the role well. His face will be carved on banners. I won't let you launch it, she said. Phelan shook his head. You won't stop it either. He signaled, and 2 guards leapt forward. Tyra ducked under the first blade, slashing upward. Sparks flew as metal met metal. Rourke opened fire, dropping one warrior, then rolling behind a console. The room became a blur of movement and sound. Steel, fire, footsteps. The countdown voice kept speaking, unbothered. Impact in 1/600 seconds. Tyra fought her way toward the core. Valen blocked her path, their blades clashing again and again. She was faster. He was stronger. But she knew something he didn't. She had stopped fighting for herself. I'm not the one who betrayed our people, she growled through gritted teeth. You are. You fed them hate and called it pride. Valen roared and swung wide, but she stepped inside his guard, pressed a small device against his armor, and kicked him backward. The charge exploded, not enough to kill, but enough to knock him unconscious. Tyra collapsed to her knees, breathing hard. Rourke ran to the control panel. The core's sealed. We need a fail-safe key to abort it. I have it, she said, reaching into her collar. One last piece of my name. She inserted the key. The lights dimmed. The countdown halted. Silence fell. The weapon was disarmed. Tiro didn't feel relief. She felt the ship shake. From outside the viewport, they saw flashes, explosions. Not from humans, but from Zeveran ships firing on their own. Your mother's purging the rebellion, Rourke said grimly. Tyra stared at the chaos outside. She'll kill anyone who helped us, she whispered. And what will you do? Rourke asked. She looked down at her blades. I'll give her a new name to fear. The final warning. Fulfilled, the fire outside the flagship was no longer a warning. It was war. Zeveran cruisers circled the Vox Eternum like vultures, their cannons glowing with readiness. One by one, loyalist ships opened fire on the rebellion. The air trembled. Red bolts streaked through space like lightning, tearing through their own ranks without hesitation. No trial, no mercy, just cold, calculated annihilation. Tyra watched from the observation deck, her face pale in the flickering lights. Her fingers curled tightly against the reinforced glass. These were her people, pilots, captains, officers she had trained with, grown up beside. Some of them had once held her hand during blood rituals. Now they were nothing more than burning dots vanishing into the black. Behind her, Rourke reloaded his rifle with calm precision. They're clearing the sky, he said. Your mother wants no witnesses. Tyra turned slowly, her voice dry. She's wiping out her own bloodline. She already wiped out yours, he replied. The words landed like a knife between her ribs. It was true. The moment the High Matron signed her execution order, Tyra was no longer Zeveran royalty. She was nothing, not a soldier, not a leader, just a name with a target on her back. Still, something inside her refused to break. Maybe it was human stubbornness rubbing off, or maybe it was something older, something deeper. The kind of rage that lives at the bottom of silence, the kind that rises only when you've lost everything you once feared losing. She looked at Rourke. We need to reach the command throne. If I speak from the Vox Eternum's core channel, they can't block the signal, not even my mother. You really think they'll listen? Tyra smiled grimly. No, but they'll hear me. And right now that's enough. The path to the command throne wasn't a straight corridor. It was a test. Carved in the old ways, the inner sanctum of the flagship was lined with mirrors of obsidian steel, symbols of judgment, sacrifice, and legacy. Every few meters, statues of ancient Zeveran warlords stood frozen in time, their weapons raised, their eyes watching. Tyra remembered this hallway. She had walked it as a child, barefoot, blindfolded, to prove her loyalty. Now she sprinted through it, soaked in sweat and blood, dragging her future behind her like a chain. The throne room doors loomed ahead. Rourke placed a hand on her shoulder, slowing her. We'll be walking into a death sentence. I've already died, she whispered. They burst through. At the center of the room sat the broadcast throne, an ancient neural interface fused with Zeveran biotech, designed for blood-bonded royals. Only one of noble lineage could sit and survive. All others burned. Tyra didn't hesitate. She dropped to her knees, placed both palms on the crystal arms, and felt the sting immediately. The throne didn't welcome her, it punished her. Her bloodline had been revoked, stripped by her mother's decree. The system saw her as a fraud, an invader. The pain surged like liquid fire through her spine. Rourke moved to pull her away. No, she gasped. I need this. Her voice was tight with agony, but her grip didn't loosen. The throne began to glow. Across every Zeveran ship still tuned to the central channel, her image appeared. Not regal, not composed, but battered, defiant, real. This is Tyra of House Larix. No longer royal, no longer bound. Listen to me now. Every crew paused, every rebel, every loyalist. For a few moments, even the guns went quiet. You were told the humans would destroy us, that they would twist our traditions, that we had to strike first. But the real lie came from within, from the throne you still obey. Her breath hitched. Blood dripped from her fingertips where the throne's veins bit into her skin. I saw what they tried to bury. I saw how they forged evidence, how they blamed an innocent man to provoke war. I stood beside him as we stopped. The weapon meant to wipe out a colony of children and families. Humans. Yes, but people. One of the guards watching from a control room turned off his weapon. Another stepped back from his post. Doubt began to crack the mirror. If you strike now, you strike for silence. You strike to cover shame, not honor, not glory. Suddenly the room trembled. An explosion shook the throne chamber. The rear blast door collapsed. A squad of elite Zeveran guards stormed in, led by none other than Valen, bloodied, limping, furious. "You think words will save you?" he shouted, pointing his blade at her. Tyra stood, the throne still pulsing behind her. "No," she replied. "But this will." She raised the override crystal she had stolen from the launch panel. It blinked twice, then shattered in her palm. Across the fleet, systems glitched, commands locked, weapons froze. The flagship's power control surrendered. To her last act. The war machine stopped. Valen lunged. Rourke intercepted him mid-charge. The two crashed into each other, steel meeting steel, fists against armor. Their fight was not elegant. It was desperate, violent. The clash of two men who had already decided that only one of them would leave standing. Tyra didn't wait to see who won. She stepped toward the main console, voice breaking. "All units, stand down. I'm not your future, but I can be your last mistake." The room fell still. Valen lay unmoving on the floor. Rourke, chest heaving, looked up at her with a flicker of something that wasn't quite relief, but it was close. Tyra looked at the silent monitors. Some ships powered down, others began retreat maneuvers, and somewhere out in the black the Zeveran High Matron would be watching. Furious, alone. The throne released her with a gasp. She collapsed to one knee. Rourke caught her before she hit the floor. "You did it." "No," she whispered. "We did. A new name. A new future." In the days that followed, silence became the loudest sound across the stars. The Vox Eternum drifted above the edge of the atmosphere, no longer a symbol of dominance but of collapse. Its systems remained stable only because Rourke and Tyra had disarmed the failsafes. Below it, the planet Marith, home to over 50,000 human colonists, remained untouched, alive, and painfully unaware of how close death had come. Tyra remained in the medbay for 3 days. Her hands were wrapped in synth bandages to repair the burn scars left by the neural throne. The pain was constant, but the dreams were worse. In them her mother's face flickered behind a wall of fire, always silent, always turning away. In them Valen stood over her, not with a sword, but with a mirror, forcing her to look at who she had been. On the 4th day, she woke to the sound of boots outside the door, measured, deliberate steps she had come to recognize in her bones. Rourke entered carrying 2 steaming cups of Kavari, human brewed but with a bitterness that reminded her of home. "Still breathing," he said. "Barely," she muttered, flexing her fingers. He handed her the drink and sat across from her. For a long time, neither spoke. The quiet between them was not awkward. It was heavy, yes, but shared. Finally, he broke the silence. "You've been declared exiled by the Zeveran Council, stripped of your caste. House Lariix has disavowed you." Tyra looked away. "Then I truly have nothing." "No," Rourke said. "You have one thing left, a choice." She turned to face him. "A choice? We're forming a joint task force, human and Zeveran defectors, peacekeepers, diplomats, engineers, warriors who saw what nearly happened and want to build something better. It's not much, but it's real." He leaned forward. "And we need someone who's walked on both sides of the fire." Tyra studied his face. This man who, days ago, she had mocked. This man she had framed, nearly doomed to execution. Yet he had protected her, trusted her, and now offered her a seat at a table that didn't yet exist. "What would I even be?" she asked, the bitterness creeping back. "A symbol? A pet traitor to parade for unity? Rourke didn't smile. You'd be something no one's ever seen before. She laughed once, dry and broken. But there was something behind it. A tremble in her chest that hadn't been there in years. Hope, maybe. Or courage dressed up as sarcasm. I don't want my name anymore, she said quietly. Let the council keep it. Let them bury it. Rourke nodded. Then choose a new one. One cycle later, the people of Marith gathered outside the outpost. The air was warm, the clouds bright with the shimmer of a twin sunrise. Children ran between the legs of soldiers, laughing, free from fear. A new building stood in the center of the outpost courtyard, its structure blending human steel with Zeveran crystal, its walls engraved in both languages. It was not a fortress. It was a school, the first of its kind. A crowd waited as a young Zeveran girl approached the podium, her robe simple, her speech short. This school is named not for blood or rank, but for choice. For one who chose truth over comfort, who saw war coming and stepped in the way. The girl turned to the figure standing behind her. Tyra stepped forward. She no longer wore royal armor. No symbols, no blades. Just a plain gray jacket, her scars visible, her hand still raw but steady. I don't ask you to forget who I was, she said, her voice firm. I ask you to remember why I changed. A murmur moved through the crowd. Not disapproval, not awe. Something else. Recognition. And if you ask who I am now, she continued, you may call me what the humans called me after the battle. She paused, then spoke the words slowly. Tyra the Bridge. Behind her, Rourke stood in the shadow of the academy. He didn't step forward. He didn't need to. Some stories don't end in romance or revenge. Some end with the beginning of something. Better epilogue years passed. The bridge Tyra built would not hold forever. There were more wars, more politics, more setbacks. But something had changed. The lie that sparked the fire had been exposed. And that truth gave birth to more than peace. It gave birth to possibility. And in the history records of both worlds, underlined in both human script and Zeveran glyphs, one phrase was carved into stone. She was pushed too far, so she turned and changed the future.